a lot of things are happening. You want to make sense of what's happening. You can't really force everything into these buckets of fascism and anti-fascism. Some people try to do that. I think that's pretty limited. It gets you somewhere. It doesn't get you too far. Eventually, it just becomes nonsensical polemics. So do you have a well enough refined vocabulary, if you want one, for thinking through and seeing and understanding, evaluating, judging, supporting, opposing the various tendencies that are taking place in the world today? Hi everyone, my name is Michael Millerman, millermanschool.com. Great to be with you again. In this video, we're going to go over a quick introduction to right-wing anti-liberalism, what it is, why it matters, why you should study it, and what it can teach us today. So let's just begin very clearly. There's liberalism and there's liberalism. What does that mean? Classical liberalism, a kind of free market, freedom, privacy, individuals who have their own little world, keep the government away, keep the state away, keep religion away. Okay, kind of classical liberalism, which is all about the freedom of the individual. And then there's another form of liberalism, gets called liberalism. It's kind of like left liberalism. It's kind of like the crazy liberalism of today, wherein transgender rights come into the picture and this weird focus on race and gender, almost at the exclusion of everything else. So liberalism underwent a transformation. In its transformation, it became less focused on individual rights and liberties and more focused on these sub-individual identity networks, like identities of race and gender, but always marginalized races and marginalized genders. Okay, it's not like they're primarily focused on how to make the white man strong again. They're focused on how to elevate the marginalized and historically oppressed voices. They're two different movements. They both get called liberalism at different times, even though one of them obviously was against the left and one of them has more in common with the left. But let's just say that, today's liberalism is primarily that second version. There's some people who want to bring it back to classical liberalism, but still, that's kind of the ambiguity of the word liberalism. When we think about left-wing anti-liberalism, you have a focus on the inequalities that get produced when you have a focus on equality of opportunity, or when you focus on individual rights and freedoms, when you focus on people's efforts, people's, when the individual is the key thing, then what you have is the production of inequalities that comes with the territory, but that left anti-liberals tend to criticize. So they're interested in mismatches of power, in oppression, like I said, in marginalization. They're interested in decentered voices and all of these things, right? Historically oppressed peoples. And largely, the left criticism of liberalism has to do with that kind of underclass, the outcast, the marginalized, the people who are apparently treated unjustly, and whose injustice needs to be rectified through various forms of equity. And that equity restores them to their dignity, and it no longer leaves them outside as the sort of refuse of the political system. So a lot of people know about left-wing anti-liberalism. You can be inundated with it. But right-wing anti-liberalism is a little bit different. It wasn't about free individuals, and their economic activity and all the rest of it, leave me alone, laissez-faire, that sort of thing. That's not what it was primarily about. And it also wasn't primarily critical of that from the point of view of inequality and social justice and equity. Rather, it had a completely different way of criticizing liberalism. Bourgeois liberalism, capital liberalism, left liberalism, social liberalism, completely different angle. It said, you know what? You reduce man to his economic motives. You create degenerates, not human beings. What you call the individual is a shell. It's just a partial relic. It's like the least relevant part of what true individuality is. You can't have true individuality if you've amputated the soul of the human being. A genuine individual is an integrated individual, one who has brought the whole of heaven into his being, somebody who's basically transformed himself from within to become an outstanding individual. You can't call, you and everybody else around you an individual. There are only a few individuals. You have to earn the right to be an individual. So it's kind of like a Nietzschean anti-liberalism at times, or that's one strand of it. Don't call everybody an individual. There are very few true individuals. Don't reduce everything to the desire to be free from interference. What about the desire to be free to realize your highest potentials? And your highest potentials are not merely life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Go eat what you want, drink what you want, sleep with whom you want, make as much money as you can. It's something much grander. We're in the world here of the aspiration towards kingship, towards godliness, okay, towards apotheosis and deification. True human beings are the few and the rare. And both liberalism in its two different forms and leftism, communism, socialism, and all of that have really hollowed out the human experience. So that's a big part of it. And there are so many varieties of right-wing anti-liberalism, this really often gets missed. So someone might say, your focus on the individual is misguided. What we need is a great state. And the great state is not in the service of providing welfare benefits for everybody. No, that's not what we're talking about. The great state should embody in itself a world historical ideal. It should be like the encapsulation of God on earth. Other people will say, no, you know what? The state is not the primary driving force. We need to be against class-based analysis, against individual-based analysis. Race and gender shouldn't preoccupy us as much as they do. But what we need actually is, yes, a focus on race and gender, but not on the marginalized races and genders, on the superior races and genders. We actually do need racial and gender supremacy. Okay, there's that kind of thing. Like the world has been feminized, it should be masculinized. The world has been made colorful through this attention on third world, immigrants, and all the rest of it, and we need to restore it to the European. And so there's a right-wing anti-liberalism that is all about basically the European masculinity, you could say, as being the great grand thing on earth. It's not as focused on the state. There are other right-wing anti-liberalisms that are more focused on ideas. Okay, so they're not primarily elevating the state to the great institution. They're not really first and foremost saying that the race and gender categories should be reestablished the way they were. There's something different. They say, you know what? Truth and beauty have fallen out of the picture with all of this focus on money and freedom. Not to say anything about equality and social justice. If you care about truth and beauty, and you want to put truth and beauty and the good, if you want to put somehow these classical aspirations back into the center of our concern, then you can't do it as a liberal. Somehow liberalism waters down the truth. Liberalism waters down beauty. Liberalism waters down the good. It privatizes it. Eventually it tries to be so neutral and so inoffensive that all it can produce is ugliness and lies. And then the people who get offended by that ugliness and lies, they want to react against it. They want to reassert something else. So that's a different sort of right-wing anti-liberalism. Not really focused on race and gender, not primarily statist, but somehow, nevertheless, deeply critical of liberalism's tendency to have this downward force on the great heights of human existence. Truth, beauty, the good. As I said, religiosity can be a part of that. Liberalism has hollowed out a human religion and soulfulness and everything there. So this is just one thing you should think about, okay? Everybody tends to categorize the right as fascist and Nazi and neo-Nazi, authoritarian. There are all of these sorts of phrases, but they don't really come from a study of the right. They come from the way that the liberals and the left insult the right. No, that would be like if we never really understood liberalism or leftism, we only thought it was all wokeism, clown world, pederasty, and this video is probably getting demonetized. But I'm saying I don't monetize it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But that's like, you don't understand anything if you just understand it in terms of insults, clearly, right? So if you're insulting the right by calling them fascists and neo-Nazis, okay, that I'm sure is effective so far as it goes, but you don't really understand very much when you do that, right? You're just doing polemics. So to understand right-wing anti-liberalism, you have to actually go through some of the thinkers on the right. And then you're able to draw these distinctions. You're able to see how they draw the distinctions. One person wants a king. Say that's a monarchist. He wants a king. One person wants to go back 500 years, certain sort of reactionary. He's like, we must turn back the clock. Somebody says, no, the great future of the right lies ahead. That's not the same. Wanting to go back is not the same as wanting to go forward. So that's always been distinguished. Reactionaries who want to go back, and conservative revolutionaries who have a conservative vision of the future that incorporates the past and the present in a conservative revolution. That's Arthur Moyler Vandenbroek wrote about that, for instance. Okay, Nietzschean conservatives, the Nietzschean right and the Heideggerian right, two great philosophers, two of the greatest philosophers ever, two of the greatest philosophers of our time, Nietzsche and Heidegger. They each have their right-wing followers, and their right-wing followers don't see necessarily eye to eye on the basis of their criticism of liberalism. But they're both on the right. They're both right-wing anti-liberals, but they don't agree necessarily in the terms of analysis. Let's say the Nietzscheans may, for instance, be talking about will and about life and about strength and about the blonde beast with blue eyes and about whatever else that they're talking about. Whereas the Heideggerians are talking about alienation and about being and about authenticity. It's a different sort of thing. The emphasis is totally different, even though they both can't stand liberalism, to say nothing of leftism. Or one of the great men, in my view, in the history of political philosophy that we have the privilege to learn from these days, through his books, he's dead, Leo Strauss. Okay, Leo Strauss was critical of liberalism from the right without it necessarily falling into these other categories. Because as I mentioned, a concern with truth and with the degeneracy of truth in our time, concern with beauty, with the degeneracy of beauty in our time, and a concern with philosophy. And all of that, it can lead a person to go back to not only Nietzsche, but Plato. I see here's a nice book, Strauss, Plato, Nietzsche. So some people want to go back to Plato. There's a kind of Platonic anti-liberalism, which isn't the same as Nietzsche, isn't the same as Heidegger, isn't the same as Hitler, isn't the same as Mussolini, isn't your local pub racist. It's something else. So I encourage you, if you're somebody who's trying to understand the world, because this is a hugely relevant phenomenon, besides just being interesting, important, and possibly true, it's also hugely relevant to understand the varieties of right-wing anti-liberalism. You're not going to make sense of the world without it, because there's a resurgence of anti-liberalism on the right. You see many signs of it, okay, at a low level. More and more people talking about mass deportation. That's not really a liberal value, mass deportation. But a lot of people are unhappy about the effects of mass immigration, and they're thinking the only way to solve the problem of having terrorist-supporting, country-hating people running through your streets is to send them away. Other people support mass deportations for other reasons. Okay, or you see every movie that comes out is a remake of some movie that was made 20 years ago, but with all the roles belonging to minority figures. And you think, okay, how far can you take this minority shtick? Maybe we need a return of great figures, great men, great myths. You also have everybody who's against that. The return of great myths is fascist. Obviously, mass deportations is fascist. So a lot of things are happening. You want to make sense of what's happening. You can't really force everything into these buckets of fascism and anti-fascism. Some people try to do that. I think that's pretty limited. It gets you somewhere. It doesn't get you too far. Eventually, it just becomes nonsensical polemics. So do you have a well enough refined vocabulary, if you want one, for thinking through and seeing and understanding, evaluating, judging, supporting, opposing the various tendencies that are taking place in the world today? Domestically, all the issues that are taking place domestically, meaning in your countries, and internationally. Is Israel's war with Lebanon and Gaza like or unlike Russia's war with Ukraine? What about other conflicts in the world? Are they all mappable onto the same set of binary concepts? Or do you need to sort of figure them out using a slightly more intelligent model? You got to think, maybe this is maybe there are 3 or 4 conflicts that are all conflicts on the right internationally, but they're completely different. One is a fight for empire, one is a fight for nation, one is a fight for race, one is a fight for ideals. Is that all the same? I don't think so. Maybe, but you should consider the case that it isn't as you try to make sense of what's going on. So this is an invitation, as are so many other videos on this channel, not to be a right-wing anti-liberal. That's up to you. You decide for yourself whether that's what makes the most sense or whether some combination of liberalism and rightism or whatever else. You take whatever political position you want to take, but the goal of this channel is to help you to understand the world. We understand by thinking about it. We understand through the categories of our understanding. We understand through our conceptual frameworks. And I think it's just been the case that right-wing anti-liberalism has been the least well articulated since the end of the Second World War, for obvious reasons. Kind of like, if you get stung by a bee and then you see some other flying creature, you probably want it to stay away from you because who knows, it might hurt you too. So somehow everything gets called fascism because that was such a conspicuously, from the point of view of the liberal world and the leftist world, fascism and Nazism were so damning. You don't even want to take the risk of potentially miscategorizing or recategorizing or letting something through the door that shouldn't be there. God forbid. That's understandable. Okay, but so is the need to try to figure out the right way of talking about these things. As I say, I'll give you the simplest example because this short video is already too long. Anti-fascists. I've heard this a million times. I'm going to simplify it. We'll just show how ridiculous these things can get, right? There are some anti-fascists who define fascism as dividing the world between us and them. Okay, fascism divides the world between us and them, between the good guys and the bad guys. You're with us, you're against us. That's fascism. We're against that, but we call ourselves anti-fascists. And if you're for that, you're a fascist, you're our enemy, we get to punch you in the face, you should die, you're the scum of the earth. So they're like, fascism is division between us and them. We reject that division. Anybody who accepts it is our enemy. Okay, I hope you don't need me to explain to you the problem. It's so obvious. It happens all the time. Versions of it happen all the time. And if you want to navigate your way through this world with understanding, with clarity, with insight, with some degree of consistency, nobody's promising that you can make everything in the world entirely consistent, but you can at least gradually try to improve your understanding of things, even if you can never reduce everything to a perfectly harmonious model or remove every final contradiction, you can at least make progress in this direction. So I think the category of right-wing anti-liberalism is useful, and it allows us to go through these varieties of right-wing anti-liberalism: Platonic, Nietzschean, Heideggerian, Schmittian, racist, fascist. Yeah, there will be Hitlerites, there will be Mussoliniists. Okay, there will be straight up Nazi and fascist thought there, but not all of it. And it would really stink if you had to throw out Plato, Nietzsche, and Heidegger, three greatest philosophers maybe of all time, not to mention whatever else you might have to throw out, because it was neither liberal nor leftist and therefore gets slotted as fascist and evil. That's what we're trying to guard against. The opposite risk: too tolerant, too understanding, too willing to draw fine distinctions, and then you actually do let some sewage in with the water, you drink it and die. So that's, what can I tell you? That's the difficulty of being somebody who's in politics and thinking about politics, in the world and thinking about the world. Acting and understanding comes with the territory. So hopefully you found this to be a helpful, quick little primer on right-wing anti-liberalism. If you enjoyed it, like, share, subscribe, comment, and stay tuned for the next video.